A few years ago, there was a chap in charge of Lamborghini called Stefan Winkelmann. He's an impossibly stylish kind of person, very fit, very smart, probably speaks 9 languages, and anyway, he was in charge of Lamborghini. And he was called upstairs, and I don't mean he died, is that Audi management, who own Lamborghini, brought him up and put him in charge of something. And this struck us as a little odd because he'd done such a great job at Lamborghini. Got out the Huracan, he got the Urus SUV over the line, but he's a smart cookie. They put him in charge of Quattro, which is now called Audi Sport. And the first car that came out under his watch was this, the new Audi RS3. Didn't really have that much to do with it, he wasn't there for long enough, but it makes for a good story. This is a slightly unexpected car. Take a look at it. If you think it looks a little bit shorter than usual, it does because it's based on the smaller hatchback. It's got a shorter wheelbase, so it's the same as the RS3 hatchback, which means everything's just a little bit smaller. There's a few firsts on this car. It's the first RS3 to wear the RS3 badge on a boot rather than a hatchback. It's the first RS3 to be able to get carbon brakes. Unfortunately, this one just has the steels. Never mind, you can't have everything. And it's the first time that this version of the Audi 5-cylinder is under the bonnet. This version of Audi's 5-cylinder is all aluminium, whereas previously it had a steel block, so it is 26 kilos lighter. That is much lighter. Now, weight might be down, but power is up by 24 kilowatts to 294 kilowatts, which is just over 400 metric horsepower. It's a lot of power, a little bit under if you talk brake horsepower. It's also got Audi's brand new 7-speed dual clutch transmission, which is much better than the old one, and you can get all of the power to the rear wheels if you want it. Now, torque. It has 480 Newton meters, and that is really key in this car. That means it's got a lot of muscle in the mid-range. Now, 480 Newton meters of torque is a lot, but think about that. I used to own a BMW M5 V10, which had 5 litres, twice the size of this, 10 cylinders, twice the size of this, and only had 520 Newton meters. So this thing is going to be a giant killer. There are some other detailed differences in the sedan. The roof is 12 millimeters lower. Now that doesn't sound like much, but it means it has a lower center of gravity than the hatchback. The rear wheels have a wider track, which means it's a bit more on the road, and it is a mere 5 kilos heavier. That's just a bag of groceries. It doesn't really matter which A3 you buy, the interior is really good, but up here at the top of the range, it's excellent. There's leather everywhere. These seats look amazing and are really comfortable, and they really hold you in when you're driving. And there's Alcantara on the steering wheel, which I really like. It's got a thumping stereo with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and it's also got this, Audi's virtual cockpit. It's a fully digital dashboard, but it's one that works. It's really fast, it's super techy. You can press a button and you get a full widescreen display of the sat-nav, or you can just have the big fat RS version of the dash, which is a tacho and a digital speedo. And that's the thing about this car. It's full of amazing tech. It's more powerful than the AMG A45 and the BMW M2. It's got a fantastic 7-speed twin clutch. It does look a bit tame though, doesn't it? The other two look the part, and in the case of the AMG A45, sound the part. So does this Armani-suited James Bond really cut it in this world, or is it just a bit too tame? Nope, because this thing is completely bonkers. I mean, it's not as deep-throated, chesty as the BMW M2. That's a Turbo 6, so you know you can't really compete with that kind of capacity and cylinders, and you know that's quite a car. But you know this is so much more interesting than the AMG A45 or the CLA 45. I mean, that's quite a good car, that one, but you're not making any decisions. You're you're not in charge. You're not in charge in any modern cars, and I know I always say that, but this one you feel more in charge and you feel more connected to the road. The steering is heaps better than the AMG. So forget about the Merc. It's just not as good and as much fun as this. The only disappointing thing about this car was a couple of disappointing things. One of them is the power on understeer. So I tip it into a corner like this and it will want to push a bit. So I've just got to be a bit more patient with the throttle around corners. So that's one disappointment out of the way. But this is really good fun in the twisty stuff. So it does ride quite hard, particularly dynamic mode. So obviously you can choose your mode and you can also choose the best bits of each mode individual. But it's not so hard you feel like you're going to get thrown off the road. Like that's one of the problems with the AMG A45. It does feel really hard. And sometimes the M2 on a really big bump can feel like it's going to spit you off the road. But yeah, this car never feels like it's going to do that. And interestingly, I don't know if Audi's being cute sticking with the 5-cylinder because the AMG's a 4 and the M2's a 6, but it kind of feels like they're sticking with the 5 to be a bit funny. But anyway, yeah, I really love the way this car changes direction. I love the way it really comes to you when you're pushing it. When you push it quite hard, like I have been able to on occasion, around a racetrack, it's really good fun. And like on a race, it's not really a track car, particularly without the carbon brakes. We've got steel brakes, it's not really a track car. But you do get that power on understeer that you'd probably not expect given that it's a rear bias car, but it is great that it's got that rear bias. I really enjoy that. And you know, these tyres, there's a tremendously sticky set of Pirelli P0s on this car, which mean you have got grip for days, which means great cornering and great stopping power. It really is quite something. It's just, you know, these lovely tight corners that I've found here are just, it loves them. It really does, because that torque hauls you out of the corner. And the fact it's got a bit of ride height means you're not going to be bottoming out everywhere. It's really quite something. The way it hauls up the hills, it slings you from corner to corner. It's just, but it's so easy. And then when you're done playing the hooligan, you can turn it all down to comfort and just drive home. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Whereas the M2, the dampers aren't dynamic, and yeah, you're stuck with it. So it's the whole way. So your kidneys are threatened in the M2, whereas this car, not so much. And it will calm down, and it's quiet and composed, and it just slips into traffic without anyone knowing what you've got. Nobody knows what this is. It's pretty cool. I really like this car. It is soft enough to have a little bit of roll, but that's okay. I don't mind a car that rolls a little bit because that means there's enough compliance in the suspension to get the job done without hurting you, you know, like bouncing a filling out of your tooth or whatever. And it just gives you a little bit of feel of what the chassis is doing. Like, I don't like cars that roll a lot, but there's just a little bit of roll to let you know which way the car's thinking, which way the car's going, which way the car is thinking. Because you can get this car without the dynamic damping, and I actually prefer it because again, it rides really well. In fact, I think it rides better than the lesser S3, which is weird. That's becoming a bit of a trend in the sportier end. They seem to be putting a lot of effort into the ride, particularly the German companies. But yeah, it's a terrific thing. It really is. The Audi RS3 might look a little bit tame, but I can assure you, if you want it to be, it can be an axe-wielding homicidal maniac. It may not have the chassis tech of its obvious German rivals. The AMG A45 is probably a bit faster, but in the end, you're not doing much in it. It's not that interesting. I prefer the BMW M2 to all three of them to drive, but to live with, this is the one. It'll go fast, it'll go slow, it'll look after you. In many ways, it is like James Bond. It's got a sharp suit, a jacket full of cool gadgets, and if you really need him to, he can headbutt with the best of them.